Good afternoon, everyone. I was about to say good morning. Today's going by too fast. But good afternoon. We're halfway through the day, thank goodness. Thank you, obviously, for joining us today. We're excited to talk about a topic that's generating a lot of buzz right now. I'm sure all of you have heard it, AI agents. Some organizations are already using these to automate tasks and streamline workflows, while others are still trying to understand what they are and how they can create real business value. So today, as I've said in the emails that you guys have probably seen, our presenters, David and Russell, are going to explain the fundamentals and show you how you can build one of your own. So let's dive in and start building one.
All right. Well, thank you, Sonia. Thank you for the great introduction. Happy to be here, everybody. This is going to be a fun one. Like I said, this is going to be very hands-on and practical. David's going to show us some really cool stuff. We will have time for questions at breaks throughout. So go ahead and pop your questions into Q&A or chat, and that way we'll make sure to hit all of them. There's also going to be a little bit of time at the end, like Sonia said. So what we wanted to do is start off with a very short recap on what an AI agent is. If you didn't attend last month's webinar, it is available on YouTube. We suggest you go check that one out too. We are then going to get into the good stuff, do a live agent build while we're sitting here with David, and then we're going to go to probably the more interesting concept, which is you built an agent. How do you make it a good one? How do you make it accurate? How do you make it repeatable? How do you make it something that you can extend to other team members successfully? And that's really where you turn it from a single person tool into an enterprise or organizational tool. And then trust comes in with that, accuracy comes in with that too. And then, like I said, a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So, brief recap on what an agent is. And, we like to say down here at the bottom, if you can explain a task to a capable coworker, you can usually start building and teaching an AI agent. So we like to follow the rule of three at Advantage. First off, that is context. That's inputs, that's who you are, what your role is. Why you might be looking for something, then the specific instructions or the question you have, the specific thing you're trying to find out, identify, understand, refine, report on, and then outputs. So that is how you want to see the information when you're going. And a good honestly, not even agent creation, but any good conversation with an AI chatbot should really try to cover these things. The more you can give an AI agent, the more accurate the information you can get out of it. Quality in, quality out. That old statement still applies very much in 2026. So I think without further ado, the fun slide, it's demo time. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague David to present. And one quick note here, we are going to be demonstrating in the HATS AI platform because, and well, David's going to talk a little bit about why we find it's particularly friendly, but everything we're going to see today, the same principles apply across AI platforms. So you can take this into Copilot, GPT, Claude, etc., and run with it. All right, David, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Russell said, we're going to work together to build an agent to demonstrate how to do this. And so for this, we're using HATS AI, as he mentioned. This is the HATS AI interface here. This is the main chat window. In order to build an agent, we're going to go to a workshop here. And if we look here in the upper left, we can see the different types of things that we can build. Apps are simple little things that you can create, which take a basic input. You can define what those inputs should be, and it gives you a real basic output, good for repeatable one-off tasks. Workflows are good for multi-step tasks. If you want to do a chain of things where it does one thing and the output of that becomes the input of the next step. The agent is what we're primarily going to be taking a look at here today, where you have conversational back and forth and can work collaboratively with AI in order to accomplish what you're trying to do. And the artifact is actually something new that was just added like a week ago that I really haven't had a chance to play with yet, so we're going to gloss over that one.
But that's actually, David, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm actually glad you brought that up instead of glossing over it, because that's a really important, it's a very important point to make. This industry is moving so incredibly fast right now. What the best tool is right now probably won't be the best tool for that job in 3 or 6 months. There are new tools coming out all the time. So one of the things we like is in your LLM, read those release notes, read those feature notes. They are constantly adding new features on.
So for the purposes of our demo today, we're going to go ahead and create a new agent here. And our agent will be Advantage Demo Agent. And we're not setting it up with email. If you want, you can make it so you can communicate back and forth with the agent via email. We're not going to do that here today. This is just going to be a demo. If you want to make things searchable, easier to find, if you start to get a lot of agents, you can select categories for it. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. A greeting message for how the agent should greet the user. Again, not going to worry too much. The big important step here is the system prompt. This is where you tell it what the agent is actually trying to accomplish, what the user is going to input to them, what it's going to specify. This is where it defines what it should do. This is where it defines what the output should be. So this is the most important step here. We're going to come back to that. And we can pick the AI model. I strongly recommend just using auto here. The nice thing about
Why is
hats
that, David? Yeah.
The nice thing about hats is if you want to select particular models, you can do that. If you want to, for example, use Claude Haiku or Claude Opus, I mean, these things are easy that you can pick off a list here. But in most cases, the average user isn't going to know the big differences between what Claude Opus does and what ChatGPT does and what DeepSeek does. So if you just pick auto, then it'll just choose the right tool for the job. And you can tune it a little bit further here. If it's going to be doing easy stuff that won't require a lot of processing, you can choose light and it'll use lighter, faster agents that use less tokens. If you choose performance.
All right, all right. So David just dropped something interesting. He said tokens, and you're going to run into this more and more now. Tokens, credits, etc. The age of unlimited AI usage appears to be coming to a close. That's because the AI companies have spent so much money. They're trying to recoup some of that cost right now. So what we're seeing is, a year ago, Claude usage was unlimited under a plan. Now there are limitations. Now there are overage charges if you're using a lot of it. So one of the things we like about this particular HATS tool with the auto model selector is it will find the appropriate tool for the job. I liken it to if I'm a pharmacy and I need to get a prescription out to somebody in Hagerstown. Yes, I can rent a 40-foot semi truck, and I will get my prescription there, and it's going to get about 5 miles a gallon. I could also get in a Prius and get my prescription out there just as effectively and get 50 miles a gallon. So some of the LLMs are like that. Simple questions. You don't need the latest and greatest, most expensive LLM to get that answer when a basic one can give you just as good a result.
Mhm. And so when choosing auto here, you can choose to do a lighter, simpler, cheaper model if you know it's going to be working primarily with easy stuff that isn't going to require a lot of reasoning or processing. Turbo will specify that it should go ahead and use those premium models. It's going to be a very heavy task, and we want that reasoning, we want that deep complexity, and cost is not as much of an issue. Performance is usually where I go because that usually tends to be a good balance between the two. So I'll almost always pick performance.
That's what I'm on to most of the time.
Mhm. And also tooling is also important. Specifically, the way LLMs work, they're trained on their model data up to a certain point in time. So if you want to ask a model a particular question, it'll only be able to answer it based off of its training data. So if I ask the model to explain to me generally accepted accounting principles, or if I ask it to explain to me how to write a function in C sharp, it'll be able to answer those questions for me. If I ask it, what's today's weather, or what are the news headlines for today, or do I have any emails that I haven't read through yet and need to respond to? That's what the tooling is for. It'll provide those additional connections. It'll be able to go search the web or search your email and provide that as context into the LLM so that it can process it. So again, like with the model select, HATS does give you the option where you can either select all the tools here yourself if you know what you want.
You can also see there are things like integrations with CRMs and other
Mhm.
APIs, Google searches, etc.
Or much like with the model, you can just, if you don't know the difference, you just want it to work, you can just hit auto tool and call it a day, which is
Auto
what I
tool can
suggest we do most of
also
the time.
Yeah, an auto tool can also be a cost savings measure too. For instance, a really clear case is heavy duty mathematics of any type in the agent you're building. AI LLMs aren't very good at math. They get approximate answers, they narrow down, and it's computationally expensive. It uses a lot of credits. An auto tool will do something like insert a programming script to just use a calculator function, and you'll get a more accurate, faster answer that uses less credits when you turn that auto tool on.
Okay, so coming back around to the system prompt here, one of the very nice things about hats, the phrase you'll hear them use over and over again in their training is use AI to use AI, and I like it, so I'm going to
Oh,
shamelessly
that
steal it
one.
here. So in this case, we can just tell it what we want and it'll help us write the prompt. So all I'm going to say here is create a prompt or a prompt for me that reviews a contract that the user uploads and helps us to identify risks in the contract. So a really basic prompt, not giving it
Mhm.
a ton of information to work with, primarily so you can see what it does and what it comes back with.
Okay. And I like the example here. It's something that basically every company has to deal with. We all get vendor contracts. And so what's it doing here, David?
So at the moment, it's taking the prompt that I gave it, it's running it against AI, and it is currently generating the system prompt, the instructions that it's going to run in order to do it.
Okay.
And you can
Well,
see
we can
that it
just
is
see it
coming back
coming
here.
in real time. Yeah.
Mhm. So here are the instructions that it came up with. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's going to be a lot, but I will scroll through and point out the highlights. So you can see that it gave it an objective to a user will upload a contract, and when they do, analyze it thoroughly, provide a structured risk assessment, flag potentially harmful, ambiguous, or one-sided terms that could expose us to legal, financial, or operational risk, instructions on how it should analyze the contract, how it should present its findings, guidelines on how it should do it. And for a demo, I think, and honestly, as a starting point, I think this is good. I'm going to
All
go ahead and
right.
just say apply to instructions. And so you can see just from that little prompt, here is the system prompt that we're going to use as the instructions. So I'll hit create agent, and we can see that it was created successfully. All right, so let's go test it out. Couple ways we can get there. We can either go to the chat and it'll show up in our model selection here. We can see our agents here with our
Mhm.
Advantage demo agent, or we can go to the workshop and I can look at my items, or if someone else created it and it was shared with me, I can look at my shared items. And so we can see our Advantage demo agent here, and I'll open that and it'll take us to the chat window as well. So you can get there either way. Yeah, running a little slow today, it looks like.
Yeah, there, just so you know, folks, there's some kind of maybe DDoS attack going on today. It looks like there have been a bunch of internet sites that are running a little slow. So,
Well, we can get to it this
yep.
way.
Yep.
So I'll pick my Advantage demo agent here.
Mhm.
And so all I'm going to do is upload my document here. And I've generated a sample contract between Advantage Industries and a fictitious company that we created called Meridian, who's going to act as one of our vendors. And I used AI to create this contract. I just told
Love
it,
it.
create me a sample contract, and it gave it to
Mhm.
me. Which, if we want to just glance really quickly, we can see standard vendor supply agreement with all the standard information in there, exactly what you would expect of a contract.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to upload the file here. Yep, I already
I
had.
think you got it already. Yep.
Yeah, I already did. We'll remove the extra one that I did. Okay, so I'm going to save that and close that, and we can see the file sitting here. And all I'm going to say is, please review this contract. And again, you can see it's using the auto model. You can see it's using the auto tools. It's beginning to review the contract. We can see that it's selecting what tools it thinks it needs. It's chosen the model, in this case, GLM 5.2.
Mhm. And, I noticed, David, obviously you basically typed in one sentence to build all this, which is pretty amazing, created all that information on the left. Do you recommend, and I noticed you read the objective and goal. Do you recommend normally reading that part? Do you recommend reading the rest of the
I would
prompts?
absolutely read through the whole thing and make sure you know what it's doing. Make sure that you can say, yes, that looks good to me, or, oh, that's not quite what I'm looking for.
Right.
Because again, in that window, you can have a back and forth with it. So you could, if you read through it and you see that it's missing something or something's wrong, you can say, oh, please update this section to do this instead, or please remove this section, or can you add a section that addresses this particular complaint? And so you can
Or
work with AI to update that system prompt to improve it.
Or maybe we want to give some more of that context and grounding information. We're a managed service provider IT company in Columbia, Maryland, et cetera. And give it
Certainly.
some more parameters about our own shape so it can give us more particular answers. All right, looks like we
And
got
so we
something
can
here.
see that it's still processing. It looks like it's almost done. There we go. Okay, so if we glance through here really quickly, we can see that it ran the various tools. We can see that it used 4 tools. And it looks like it was a bunch of shell commands. It was running some Python scripts. It read a file section. Yeah,
I'm
so,
so glad I don't know what that means.
and you don't have to. That's the great thing. You can just hit auto tool and it'll figure all that out for you.
Perfect.
And so we can see that it returned back the vendor supply agreement risks here. We can see it gave us an executive summary. It gave us a table of what the major risks are here. We can see we have a high risk, several medium risks, and low risks. We can see it gives us the detailed risk analysis, the things that we need to watch out for. Missing clauses that should be addressed. General observations on it. Of course, a disclaimer, this is AI. This is not a lawyer reviewing it. If it's
And
important, have an expert review it. But,
well,
I
and I
think it's
like that they
identified.
even have that bolded here, right?
Mhm.
Please have this contract reviewed by a qualified attorney. And apparently they
But it
think I
gives us a
know.
good starting
Ah,
point here to,
so
go back to them and say, oh, can you address this or
right.
recognize that it is a risk and act
Well, and
accordingly?
David, I also noticed it thinks we're in Ohio. So that's interesting, right?
Oh,
So
that
what would we do because it thinks we're in Ohio?
good question. So in this case, we can just go back to our workshop here. I'll view my items. I'm going to go edit our agent. And I'm just going to tell it, please update system prompt to indicate that our company is Advantage Industries, an MSP based out of Columbia, Maryland.
And you'll notice that David is not going back to the long list of system prompt instructions on the left to do this, right? So I know that you're just chatting with the AI
Exactly.
at
I'm
this
just telling
point.
it what I want it to do and letting it figure it out. We'll let it do the hard thinking instead of me.
Excellent. Excellent. So how important is this back and forth process?
I mean, as far as how comfortable you are doing it yourself versus working with the agent, I mean, if you're some expert on it and you know how to tune system prompts, you can certainly do it yourself. But I mean, I find it's good to start with something. Pick a starting point, something simple. We worked with it.
Mhm.
We found a shortcoming. We came back. We told it what that shortcoming is. We told it to go address it, and it's doing that now as it runs. And probably over the next few runs, we're going to find more. So we'll come back and we'll tell it what those are. And by that, we're just going to keep iterating as we improve it and continue to improve it more and more and more.
And that's absolutely crucial, the iterative improvement concept here. To borrow a quote from Winston Churchill, perfection is the enemy of progress. So you do not want to sit there and try to write your perfect AI agent right off the bat. You're probably not going to get there, and you'll spend a tremendous amount of time and get very frustrated and start thinking of all the variables that need to happen. So, like David's doing, we recommend that you just dive in, get started, build the most important requirements first, and then you start testing and going back and making these iterative changes. That process, which seems longer, maybe in concept, actually saves you a tremendous amount of time. You're not running down blind alleys, you're not chasing dead ends. Yeah.
It should not be taking this long, like you
Yeah,
said.
I
There's
think we've
something going
got
on
there.
here.
There's an internet issue going on today, a denial of service attack affecting some providers. So going to be a little slow. That's okay. Um, we will. Why don't while it's thinking, David, if you want to pop over to, or I guess anything you wanted to show us on this quick agent before. Spoiler alert, we're going to pop over to an agent that David already has spent a lot of time building and iteratively improving.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and do that.
All right.
So we'll go back to our workshop here.
So
And
what we've seen getting started, now we're going to see one, David. I think you've spent probably a couple of weeks at various points working on this one.
yeah, this has been going on for a while now. This is one that we are using internally with our company. Our CEO, Keith, is actively working with it and working to address an issue that we are actually having and running into. Specifically, within the MSP space, there are rules that the IRS and the Treasury have regarding what can qualify for tax deductions for R&D, time that you spend doing R&D. So we
That's
wanted
also
to
very common with the manufacturers we work with too, and I know this is something that they also stress about.
So in this case, we created an agent called R&D timesheet evaluation. We have our description here. The system prompt will come back to. Again, we can see we just chose an auto model. We chose auto tooling, allow personalization, and we'll look at the system prompt here again. I'm definitely not reading the whole thing here because we have iterated on this and you can see it's gotten pretty long. I will scroll through slowly, but the big thing here is that we've told it that it's an R&D timesheet evaluation agent. Its purpose is to help the user review timesheet data provided in an Excel file. So we have an Excel file containing thousands of rows of individual timesheet records, along with the projects they're on, the descriptions, the number of hours, who worked on them, and evaluate whether they work described may qualify as research and development for U.S. tax purposes based on IRS and U.S. Treasury criteria. The primary deliverable should be an updated Excel file containing the original data plus additional analysis columns, classifications, and notes that the user can use for further review. So we give it our primary objective, what it should do, a bulleted list, the core standards and constraints that we want it to work with. This getting into the iteration, I expect will probably be coming back here because this was something we actually just added yesterday.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The processing workflow of how it should do what it's doing, a definition of what does qualify as R&D,
And
what
David, at
doesn't.
that point, could you also point it to things like IRS guidebooks and handbooks?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
Right, so
And
you can
again, you
point it
can
to
use it.
external data sources, sets, or your own documents that you're uploading.
And again, you can use AI to do that. I didn't go out and go to the IRS website and search through all their papers to figure out which one it was. I told it, hey, what are the relevant regulations with the IRS and the Treasury that address software R&D? And it's like, oh, you want these regulations, you want these documents. And you
Yeah.
could open those documents, look where it said, and see that, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So we have the classification logic, we have how it should classify things, we have the evaluation guidance, uncertainty and clarification behavior, because in this case, I'm training the agent. It shouldn't just necessarily give us the document, but we do want to be able to work with it and have a back and forth conversation. So if it's not clear about something, it should tell the user, I don't know
I
this. Can
love
you
that.
clarify this
I
for
love
me?
that. And that's a problem that I run into with AIs constantly. They're very good at making assumptions. They're very good at kind of leaping ahead, which can be a double-edged sword, right? So I like that you're popping that in. If you're not certain of something, I want you to ask me.
Hmm.
And we recommend that while you're building the agent too. That's a very powerful tool when you're starting out with that initial agent build. Just saying, please ask me any clarifying questions you need is a very powerful tool.
Hmm. So for example, I'll highlight this rule right here. If it sees a field, a project label, if it uses an abbreviation, if there's a classification rule, a workbook structure that it doesn't understand, ask the user, don't guess. So it may very well come back and say, hey, I see this project here called AI integration. Does AI here refer to artificial intelligence? In which case I can say, no, that actually refers to Advantage Industries, our company, and typically does not represent R&D work.
But that's an
Instead
easy
of just
mistake for an
assuming
AI to
and
make, right? Right. And that's
and
why you want to go back and review the results. Don't
and
just, worst thing you can do is just take what it gave you and leave and not look at it. Especially when you're building that agent for the first time.
and that is another example of this iterative behavior because that was not in my first agent. And I ran it and it's like it sees AI integration and it's like, oh, you guys are working on artificial intelligence integration. That's great. That definitely qualifies. And so I'd come back here and tell it, well, no, don't assume that. And we can tell it input handling, edge cases, and special handling. You can see this thing is quite lengthy based on how we've been working on it
Oh,
over
and
the
I see
past
you've
few
got an
months.
output structure
Hmm.
too. So that's you're asking the agent to prepare the information for you in a particular way.
Yes, specifically, I wanted to add new columns because I don't want it to just classify it and give me an answer, yes, this qualifies, no, it doesn't. I want to know why it thinks that. I want it to give me explanations. I want it to tell me which ones appear to be mixed activities. I want it to score it.
Mhm.
Um,
So,
Tell me if it notices similar trends.
right.
Give me any additional notes you think would help me on why you made the decision you did. And what documentation can I provide that would strengthen the claim if I do say, yes, this qualifies?
And I think that's very important. There's a tendency to think about AI as sort of a black box, but you should be able to challenge the AI and it should be able to explain how it reached whatever conclusion it did. And if it can't, that's a signal that there's a problem going on. There's something you need to refine more. Uh,
Mhm. And it'll even go ahead and add a total summary sheet and how it should format its response and the tone and style that it should use, common mistakes that it should avoid, completion criteria, and a goal. So
yeah.
you can see that has grown over time and has gotten quite detailed. But
Okay.
again, it actually started just from a simple prompt here where I just said, I want to write a timesheet R&D agent. And
Okay.
this developed just based off of the back and forth between, okay, we have a good start, but I'm seeing this issue, address it. In this case, I do see that you are making assumptions and that's not what that project is. Please ask. Um, I was meeting with Keith just yesterday. I kind of mentioned this as I was passing. One of the things he came up with was Well, can I just add a new column in the document that it gives me? And can I go through and identify 100 of these manually and say, yes, this is, no, this isn't, and upload that and use that as training data? So you can see that it added this section here where, okay, if you see a column called manually approved, treat rows with a positive value in that column as rows that have been analyzed and reviewed by a real human. These rows do represent rows that have been, reviewed, approved. These are good data that you can rely on and use as further samples.
Let's take a look.
Okay, so if I were to come to here, and again, I'm going to pick, in this case, my R&D timesheet evaluation agent. And I'm going to pick my sample R&D timesheet data clean, which has had all of our important information scrubbed out of it. It's been randomly generated, but it follows the same format as what we used. So it will have the same columns, but with none of our actual data.
Yes, again, guys, these are not our actual Advantage timesheets. Sorry to disappoint
Nor
you.
our actual employees or...
No, no. So if you see names you don't recognize, there's a reason. So while David is uploading this, so I think one of the call outs I want to make here is that people are absolutely a part of the process here. And so this is true while building the agent in particular. So you start, you need to be able to assess the results of the agent. How accurate was it? How is it doing? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is this the output you expected? So that's, if we go back to last month's webinar, that's where we recommend, um, you know, starting with something especially as you're just getting used to building your own agents, take a process that you know very well, right? Because it is easier for you to evaluate the results. I'll give you a very quick example while David is pulling this up. I built the first demo agent I built was to help our techs who are traveling out around the country to various client sites book a shortest door-to-door trip so they can get home to their families rather than the closest airport, which may be a small airport and require one or two flight transfers, which would add a lot to their time. So built an agent, tested it with small cities in the Midwest because that's where I'm from. I know where the airports are. I know where the towns are. I was able to, in that case, go in and say, O'Hare and Midway, if we're going to Northwest Illinois, O'Hare could be an hour, hour and a half closer. And so I was able to look at that and say, ooh, I saw you were doing an approximate distance. We actually need to do an exact distance. And I was able to tell the agent that. It added a tool to go check with Google Maps, calculate the exact distance for me. But because I knew these little towns in the Midwest, I was able to evaluate that result. So start with that business process you already know, especially when you're getting started. That's going to make it easier for you. You're already learning how to build an agent. You don't need to learn two things at the same time. Once you got a few under your belt, that's where we go back and say, okay, now start looking at a new business process. While we are waiting for this, let's take a little bit for any questions, if anybody has any. And this is normal for something with thousands of rows to take a few minutes to process, right? But that's, the other part of this is with an AI, we're going to take a few minutes to process this. Whereas if you're going through thousands of rows by hand, it's going to take hours. Any questions? Sonia, any questions come in
Yeah,
while we're waiting for this?
there
Okay.
is one. Should I have the auto tool option on at the bottom of the menu? They don't know if they missed that step.
Yep. Yes. Go ahead,
Generally, I would
David.
say yes, yes.
Yeah.
Unless you have specific goals in mind, like if I know I want to use only the LLM and I want to leave it off and not give it any tools, then I would leave it off. If I want to use specific tools, then I could go pick the specific tools that I want to use. So far, probably 99% of the things I've run here, I just hit auto tool and call it a day because it'll figure out what tools it needs automatically. And honestly, it does a great job picking it. So I highly recommend, yeah, just click auto tool, let it do its thing, and yeah.
That's been my experience too. Yeah, just there really isn't a reason not to use it that I've run into yet, and let it do its thing. Like I said, in my case, I didn't need to I didn't need to connect it to Google Maps API or anything. It set all that up for me. Other ones, Sonia. And by the way, folks, when we ran this the other day, it was already done. So we definitely have an internet issue.
Yeah, there is definitely something going on.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
not usually take this long.
It's
Well, I guess I have a question
Sure.
that I've always wondered. Is there any data that like we should never include in an AI agent, like across the board that you would?
You want to start with that one, David?
There are certainly things that you should be much more cautious about. Like, definitely with whatever tool you're using, make sure you know what their data retention policies and learning policies are and how they're handling what they do with data that's uploaded to it. Because generally, with things like Hat or Copilot, they seem to be pretty good on privacy protections, running it on their own systems and doing that stuff. So it tends to be pretty safe with them, as opposed to if you're using like a Chat GPT free account, guess what they're doing with your data and what you upload. Yeah, it's becoming part of the training set. Hats has good secure protections on that generally. The other thing would just be careful with what kind of data, because of course things like passwords or, client secrets or keys or anything
Yes,
like
I
that.
would say never those ones. So never do a password, never do privileged credentials, never do private keys, pass keys, anything like that.
Okay.
But
That's a
also
clear
things
line.
related to like whatever industry you're in. Like if you're in the healthcare industry, things like HIPAA and private health information would come into play. Um,
And there
definitely
you want
be
to,
careful with that, but even that's not necessarily a hard no. But again, make sure you know what the rules are regarding, how it handles the data that you upload.
that's a good example, David. I'm glad you brought up healthcare and HIPAA. If you're doing business stuff related to your healthcare organization, that's fine in pretty much any commercial LLM, not a private one. If you're dealing with PHI, personal health information, then you want to be in an AI cloud with a business associates agreement that protects that data. And that would be like Copilot from Microsoft in this case.
Mhm.
Looks like we are.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
great
starting to run.
question.
It's still going to take time to process, but we are at least often
Yep.
processing, so that's good.
I guess the other thing I'll add to that is there's a governance question that almost needs to come first. And so, like I said, the hard and fast rule is no passwords, no privileged credentials. Beyond that, you want to sit down as an organization and think about the types of data you have and where you can use it. So, like David said, some of this may be external policies like HIPAA or SOC 2 or CMMC. Some of it may be internal policies and decisions on how you want to protect your data or so there's internal data classification, there's regulatory environments, and understanding the AIs. Again, anything in HATS has a commercial agreement, so we're pretty secure in there. And then defining your own organization acceptable use policy. And that's an important part. We really recommend that people do that up front because it helps your staff. People are wary of AI. People aren't sure what to think of it. So if you can show as an organizational leadership that you've thought about these questions, you want to give your staff, here's when you can and can't use it. Here are the appropriate tools or clouds to use. So you don't want to put that on them. You want to decide that first and let your folks know that information. All right, so we're using tools. We're doing Python scripts, so we got some math in there, probably.
Well, also file processing. It's going to use it in order to even read the Excel file.
And in this case, I think you're going to have it write that data back into the Excel file, it sounds like.
It will be part of the exported Excel, yes.
Very cool. I
So it'll
like
take
that.
the original file, it's going to add those additional columns onto it for its own analysis, its own pass,
Mhm.
and it'll give us the resultant file when it's done, which, as we said, it does take a while to run.
Yep.
It is doing analysis on thousands of rows, so
Uh, We're almost done. Any others while we're waiting here a second, Sonia?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let me double check.
Hmm. Couple things we can hit. If not,
if need be, I can pull up an example output here while it runs.
why don't we do that,
Yeah.
David? That'd be great. Thank you.
I have one saved here from a previous run, so
Yep.
while that runs in the background, we can pull that up
Right.
and
And this is also a nice thing about AIs is, yes, if it is taking a while to process, just leave it running in the background.
Mhm. So you can see it added a summary timesheet to this with information on it. We can see we have 4,000 rows, 12 employees, 8 projects. It gives us information on it. We can see that we have about 100 that qualify, 920 that we're probably going to have to look at more in detail. Um, just under 2,000 that almost certainly don't qualify, and 1,000 that are a bit unclear and don't have sufficient information. And you can see the hour breakdown there. You can see the totals by the project. You can see the totals by the employee and
All of our
what we,
fake employees.
yes, all of our fake employees.
Yeah.
You can see the key findings and themes and trends and so forth, ambiguities and follow-up that you need. And if we bounce over here to the actual analysis, you can see we have our timesheet data. We can see the project name. We can see the ticket name. We can see our descriptions, as well as who worked on it and how long. The more interesting stuff is when we come over here, because we can see it assigned classifications to it. So, for example, let me enable editing here. Let's try that again. So if we look here at, for example, these, we can see that this was a routine pull request review. Routine work typically doesn't qualify, so we can see we did a password reset for someone who couldn't get into one of the systems. That certainly doesn't qualify. How about if we take a look at something that does qualify?
Mhm.
We can see that we were researching and prototyping a workflow that uses an API to automate patch deployment. Okay, yeah, that definitely qualifies. That's exactly what that kind of tax credit is for. We can see that we're investigating performance in the system and how it can be improved and upgraded. Again, that certainly qualifies. That's exactly what that credit is for. If we take a look at, for example, the mixed stuff, we can see that we were investigating an issue. Um, yeah, fixing a bug that was in there and testing across configurations. So yeah, some of the work was routine, but some of it was R&D, so that's going to give it a mixed because you'd have to dig in there and determine, what that percentage split was because some of that time would qualify, but some of it wouldn't. You can't just say this does or doesn't.
And one of the interesting things there is you've identified like a workflow issue. That's the kind of case where at that point, you come back to your dev team and you say, hey, people aren't entering their time correctly. We're tracking the specific categories, so I need you to enter the actual time on the project and your R&D time separately going forward. So
Yeah, so
some of
that
these are fixes that you're going to do in the AI. Some of them are going to highlight things that you want to do on a personnel level or
because even if
workflow
we weren't
level.
using AI here, I mean, even if we were doing it by hand, just reading the description,
Right.
what
It's not a
is
good
the
timesheet.
breakdown on that? I couldn't
Right.
tell you. So
Right.
AI doesn't have a chance.
Right. Right.
So that'll help
But now
identify
you're
that.
aware of the issue, which was
Yep.
something we weren't before with our fictive employees.
If we take a look at things that are unclear, Yeah, that doesn't really tell me anything from that description. I have no idea whether that would qualify or not.
Mhm.
Assisting is needed. Again, yeah, that's not descriptive at all. I couldn't tell you a thing.
So what do you do with those, David? And these uncertain or unclear
Mhm.
ones? What
Well, I mean,
happens?
that's where you're going to have a human come in. You're going to have to go back. You're going to have to
Right,
review the documentation. You're going to have to review what the project was, and you're going to need a human to sit down and figure that out.
right.
I mean, if this
So
is all the information that AI has, you can't make a determination off of that. That's going to come down to how good your notes are, how good your records are, how good your documentation is.
So at the stage we're at now, this isn't, tight enough for the AI to run through everything and be 100% correct, right? We don't want to get in trouble
Mhm.
tax-wise. Um, but we've cut our list considerably. We started with 4,000 entries, now we're down to 1,000. That's still a lot, right? So that's probably too many to easily go through. But now maybe we look at what these entries are. Maybe we're able to refine our agent to better identify what needs to be reviewed or doesn't. Or maybe we do have an issue with how our employees are entering their time that we need to work on. And that'll be something that we have to take care of going forward. The point is, we've cut our huge list down to a more manageable one to do a really working one on a, say, monthly basis or quarterly basis. We'd probably want to refine it even more to make this a shorter list. It's still a lot of entries to go through right now.
Mhm. But it also, yeah, helps us identify areas for improvement within the company itself, because even if it's hard to identify some of these older timesheets, it tells us here's how we need to be doing it in the future so that we can.
Right.
We do need to be mindful of if it is R&D work, it does need to be on a separate timesheet so that, we can mark that as qualified and count that time while, meeting with someone else or doing
Right.
routine work needs to be on its own timesheet so
Right.
that can be disqualified.
And David, I like what you're doing in AA and AB, where you're asking the AI to explain how it got to the conclusion it did, it looks like. It
Mhm.
should be defensible, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can see here that it's providing what its classification is. It's
Mhm.
providing how confident it is in that answer. It's providing a reason or rationale behind why it came up with what it came up with. Here's the information that it's missing that it would need in order to make a better determination. Let's give it a score on how well it qualifies. In this
I
case, not
love that.
very. If it is mixed activity, which again, those you're going to have to just review by hand because part of it sounds like it does and part of it sounds like it doesn't, and there's not enough information there to figure out what, percentage split that would be. Trends and grouping notes, again, this was generated data, so yeah, there's going to
Yeah,
be some repeats in here.
that's fine.
Are
No,
there
that's great.
similar rows? In this case, yes. Additional comments that would help us, like we can see that it thinks this was probably a meeting or demo based on the description, but again, maybe not. And then suggested documentation that would help us back it up if the IRS were to come asking questions, we can show, here's the documentation that we could show that it is. And
So if we go back, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, straight qualifying hour. So, I think that the big takeaways here are, again, we are going to use the AI to refine the results, but especially while you're building it in these initial stages, it's very, very critical to get it to a subject matter expert, somebody who knows what the output should look like, somebody who can make that call, yes, this is R&D time or not, because that's how you train the AI to be better. That's how you validate the results. But I love this, David, because I never would have thought of putting in a confidence score, even though I know AIs hallucinate. And so that's the kind of experience that you're able to pull in as a dev who's been doing this for 20 years and say that, hey, this is something that we should have on a good report. I think, let's see, I'm noticing the time, folks. We got about 10 minutes. I think let's move to wrap up. And last some questions. David, did it finish, by the way?
Let's find out. Um, Yeah, so we can
Yep,
see
there we
it
are.
did finish. Let's scroll through the answers here real quick. Okay, so we can see all the tooling and all the stuff it did up top. So we do have transparency on that. So we know exactly what it did if we really care. We can see the actual Python scripts that it ran if you're someone who understands code. Again, it's there if you need to review it. And, if not, then, you don't have to. Just close it and move on. Um, Okay, so we can see we have the summary here. It updated the workbook. It's been generated. It preserved all 4,000 rows and all 24 of the original columns, added new analysis columns, and includes a summary sheet.
Beautiful.
So here's our summary. We can see the manually approved rows. In this case, all of them were empty. Again, that was something we just added yesterday. So this is something we are actively working with.
Yeah.
And on some of those mixed and unclear ones, I mean, we can go through and say, okay, we've reviewed and yes, this one does
Right.
qualify. Yes, this
And
one does
even
qualify.
and even with the sample data and the space level, we've already cut our work in half that we have to do, and we would continue to refine it down further.
Mhm.
Perfect.
And so what we can
Um,
do is we can mark some of those as, whether or not they qualify, and then we can take that and upload it back to the
Go back to the agent
agent here,
builder.
and it can analyze that and use that information. So maybe that gets us to 3/4.
Right. Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, David. I'm gonna do a couple wrap-up slides here, folks. Cover some main points, and David, please jump in.
Sure.
And then we have time for a few more questions at the end. So let me share my screen. So this, I think, is the biggest takeaway I want people to make is that what David's really showing us is not just how to build the agent, but how to build a trustworthy agent, how to take it beyond the basic back and forth. We know, GPT tells you what you want to hear a lot of the time. So how do we correct that out of the system and build more confidence in the outputs? And really what the iterative process does is we start with a weak agent that gives an answer. Now we have confidence levels. You saw David even added a column for scores on that so we can quantitatively look at that confidence. Then David's building an agent that gives him an explanation. So each timesheet note had why it gave it the classification it did and why, or if it has any questions, what those may be. So again, it should be able to explain how it got to the answer it did. It's not just a black box. And it identifies missing information. Again, that's something we advise, like ask it to do that, prompt it to do that for you. Don't just guess and fill in the blanks. And then this leads as you refine it, and this doesn't need to take forever. This is not, 6 months. This is usually a couple weeks. You will have a production agent. So that's an agent that produces an answer. It's a consistent answer in format. So David runs it and he gets the same output that I do when I run it, right? It requests a clarification when things are uncertain. It flags exceptions. This doesn't fit any of my rules. I don't know what to do with this. And that last part is super crucial. It routes high-risk items to human for review. So we are very firm on this stance here at Advantage right now, that AI is a rapidly developing tool. You need to have human intervention. News story 2 days ago, right? An AI hacked another company. You need to have people that look at it. People are accountable. AIs aren't. From a legal sense, it's being very quickly established that you are responsible as an organization for the actions of your AIs. So be aware of that. Any big decisions, anything that requires high trust needs to have a human review layer. So AI should help people make decisions, not make decisions for people. I like that one. All right. So a couple other key takeaways. I love the first one. David can attest. You don't need to be a developer. I'm not. Uh, so start off basic. Remember, perfection is the enemy of progress, just like David did. Start with a single sentence. And the AI will help you build the rest. Trust beats automation, so agents explain, validate, and ask questions. Humans are a key layer. You're the one that is making the final decisions, making the approvals. And improvement is iterative, right? So you're going to keep going back and refining and improving. It's the same way you learn any skill, right? The 20th time you ride a bicycle is easier than the first time you ride a bicycle. Same thing with AI. So where you should start. This is a little bit of a recap from last week, where we consistently see the most ROI, the lowest hanging fruit. If your organization hasn't really gone down this journey yet, that is going to be back office internal processes. It is not marketing stuff. It's not flashy images. Those are flashy, where companies really recoup the starting dollars are on these back office processes. The nice thing with those two is those processes tend to be very defined at most organizations. How your accounting team works is very tightly defined because they're accountants. So start with those kinds of things: contract reviews, spreadsheet analysis, meeting summaries, and look for the things that are repetitive, closely defined, consistent process, and use a lot of time. You're doing them a lot and they take a lot of time. That's where start with your AI agents. Then what do you do? When do you bring in an AI architect like David? When do you bring in a dev? Right? So part of this can just be help slimming down your ideas. One of the things that David has been doing for 20 years is helping people write user stories, right? So it's not what technology bits you need, it's what you need to do as an employee of your organization, and what you want to see, what outputs you want to get. That's your user story. We've spent 20 years helping people with those. Um, Process is very important. Mistakes matter. This is a critical production thing. This is tax stuff. That's where you want to pull in an architect who will help you, just as we saw David do, build those systems into the agent that correct for and detect errors. Consistent, repeatable results. Again, we can bring in that dev experience. Multiple departments getting the agent out. And also, if you're in any kind of that last bullet point, if you have special governance review or compliance controls. So this is sort of where that special sauce as a programmer and dev comes in, because the tools are different, but the workflows, how we approach these issues, how we approach company and organizational process problems hasn't changed. Right. And so David, Eric, Dilo, our other devs are able to bring that skill and experience in and apply these in the new tools and help you get those outputs faster. So not everything needs an architect, but these very important critical areas, ones that are affecting large teams, that's where it can be a big help. Anything you wanted to add to that, David?
I think that sounds good to me.
Yeah, good rule of thumb there. So we've got a couple minutes for questions here. Anybody got any for us they want to ask? I think we covered a few earlier, so hopefully we're good.
I don't see anything, Russell, so I think we're good to go.
Yeah,
Obviously,
perfect.
thank you to you two, David and Russell, for doing this demo. Hopefully it cleared up some of the questions people had about AI agents. And then I'll be sending out an email with a recording if you wanted to check it out later, obviously to go back, maybe go through it like step by step when you have more time. And then I will be sending out notices for our next webinar, which will be in August or September. We might skip August because a lot of people are on vacation, but we'll let you know either way. And then, of course, if you have any questions regarding agents, please feel free to contact us. You can contact us at sales@ or Russell directly. Most of you that are in here right now have his email. So,
rsmith@getadvantage.com.
yep. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sonia. This was great.
Bye.